I'm standing in our kitchen, holding a dish towel I don't remember picking up. My husband's laugh is still echoing from the living room. He just said something to his brother about upgrading models. I know he meant me. What I don't know yet is whether I'm supposed to pretend I didn't hear it. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, stay with me. And if this resonates, let me know in the comments. It helps more than you think. The thing is, I'd been preparing for this lunch all morning. Glenn's brother Vance was coming over with his new girlfriend, and I wanted everything to feel easy and welcoming. I made Glenn's favorite pasta salad, the one his mother used to make, because he'd mentioned it last week in passing. I thought he'd appreciate it. I thought he'd notice. When Vance and Brooke arrived, Glenn was different, louder. He kept slapping his brother on the back and making these broad gestures like he was performing for an audience. Brooke seemed nice enough, younger than me, probably late 20s, with this effortless energy that made me feel suddenly aware of the fact that I hadn't changed out of my jeans and t-shirt. Not that it mattered, or maybe it did. I couldn't tell anymore. I was in the kitchen slicing bread when I heard it. Glenn's voice carried through the doorway, casual and light. Man, sometimes I think about the trade-in value, you know? 7 years might be time for an upgrade. Vance laughed, but it was uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure if he should. Brooke didn't say anything at all. I just stood there. The knife was still in my hand, halfway through the loaf. My first thought wasn't anger, it was confusion. Did he mean that? Was it just a joke? And then, worse, how many times had he said things like this when I wasn't around to hear them? Because this wasn't the first time. 3 months ago, at his company dinner, he made a joke about upgrading to a newer model when one of his coworkers got divorced. I laughed then. Everyone did. I thought it was just Glenn being Glenn, a little tactless, but harmless. But now, standing here with breadcrumbs on my fingers and his laughter still hanging in the air, I wasn't sure what I'd been excusing. I set the knife down carefully. I didn't storm into the room. I didn't yell. I just wiped my hands on the towel and decided to go back in there. Not to confront him, just to watch, just to see who my husband was when he thought I wasn't paying attention. When I walked back into the living room with the snack tray, nobody looked at me differently. Glenn was mid-sentence, talking about some project at work. Vance was nodding. Brooke was scrolling through her phone, half listening. I sat down on the armchair across from them, not next to Glenn on the couch like I normally would. He didn't notice. I wasn't angry yet. I was just alert. Like someone had turned up the volume on everything he said, and suddenly I could hear things I'd been missing. He mentioned my work once. Yeah, Renata's been busy with some campaign thing. And I realized he had no idea what I actually did. I told him about the rebrand project last week. I'd talked about it for 20 minutes over dinner. He'd been looking at his phone the whole time. Brooke tried to save the moment. She turned to me with this bright, genuine smile and said, "Oh, what kind of campaign? That sounds interesting." Before I could answer, Glenn cut in. "She's great at the hosting thing. Keeps everything running smooth." He said it like a compliment, but it landed like a job description. Like I was staff. I watched Brooke's smile falter just slightly. She glanced at me, then back at Glenn, like she was trying to figure out if she'd missed something. I just smiled and told her about the project myself. Glenn didn't listen. He was already back to talking with Vance. That's when Vance said something that made my stomach drop. He was laughing about their dad, some story from when they were kids, and he said, "Yeah, Dad used to make those same jokes about Mom, the whole trade her in thing, remember?" Glenn nodded, grinning. "Oh yeah, classic." Classic. Like it was a family tradition. Like their father had treated their mother the same way, and Glenn thought that was normal, maybe even funny. I excused myself to get more drinks, but really I just needed a minute. In the kitchen I pulled out my phone and texted Dinah, "I think I've been a placeholder." I stared at the message for a second before hitting send. Seeing it in writing made it feel more real. When I came back, I decided to test something. I asked Glenn about the project he'd been talking about earlier, the one at work. "How's that database migration going? You seemed stressed about it last week." He blinked at me. "What? Oh, that. Yeah, it's fine. We figured it out." That was it. No details. No acknowledgement that I'd even asked. But here's the thing. I'd made up that project. There was no database migration. I wanted to see if he'd been listening to me at all, or if he just assumed I knew what was going on in his life because I always had before. He didn't even pause. He just moved on. I sat back and watched him talk to his brother about sports, about work, about nothing important, and I realized something that made my chest feel tight. Glenn was comfortable. He thought everything was fine. He thought I was fine, because I'd spent 7 years making sure he never had to wonder. Brooke left before Vance did. She gave me a hug on her way out and whispered, "It was really nice meeting you." There was something in her voice, sympathy, maybe, or recognition. Like she'd seen something in that living room that made her uncomfortable, and she didn't know how to name it either. After they left, Glenn collapsed on the couch and said, "That went well." I didn't answer. I just started cleaning up. The next few days I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. Not obsessively, just deliberately. Like I was seeing our life from the outside for the first time. On Monday, I checked our joint account. We'd always been transparent about money, or so I thought. There were charges I didn't recognize, lunches at places downtown, coffee shops I'd never heard of, a hotel charge from 2 weeks ago labeled business expense. Glenn travels sometimes for work, but he hadn't mentioned a trip. When I asked him about it that night, casual, while we were both on our laptops at the kitchen table, he said, "Oh yeah, last-minute thing. Didn't want to bother you with it." Didn't want to bother me, like I was some delicate thing that couldn't handle his calendar. I let it go, but I started looking closer. On Wednesday, I was putting laundry away and saw his laptop open on the bed. I'm not the kind of person who snoops. I wasn't even planning to, but the screen was on, and I saw a LinkedIn message thread at the top. A name I recognized. Simone. She used to work with Glenn a few years ago, before she moved to a different company. I remembered her vaguely from a holiday party. Tall, confident, one of those women who laughs easily and makes everyone around her feel interesting. I didn't open the messages. I just read the preview. "Looking forward to catching up soon. Always great talking with you." It was from her, sent 3 days ago. His reply was underneath. "Same. Let's make it happen." Nothing explicitly wrong. Nothing I could point to and say, "This is proof." But it sat in my chest like a stone. Because Glenn hadn't mentioned talking to Simone. He hadn't mentioned catching up with anyone, actually. And the tone of it. Friendly, familiar, easy. It was how he used to talk to me. I closed the laptop and went back to folding clothes. That night, I tested something else. I didn't cook dinner. Normally, I'd have something ready by the time he got home, or at least a plan. But I just didn't. I sat on the couch with a book and waited to see what would happen. Around 7, Glenn walked in, looked at the empty kitchen, and pulled out his phone. 20 minutes later, he came back with takeout. Thai food. He didn't ask if I wanted any. He just ate at the counter, scrolling through his phone, and then went to watch TV. 3 days. It took him 3 days to notice I'd stopped trying. On Friday, I found the receipt. It was in his gym bag, crumpled at the bottom under a pair of shorts. A jewelry store. $240. Our anniversary wasn't for another 4 months, and Glenn wasn't the surprise gift type. He was the, "tell me what you want and I'll order it on Amazon" type. I smoothed the receipt out on the bathroom counter and stared at it. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't crying. I just felt this strange, cold clarity. I put the receipt back exactly where I found it. Then I went through the rest of the bag. That's when I saw the box. Small, velvet, tucked into the inside pocket. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew it wasn't for me. I texted Dinah, "I need to see you." She called immediately. "What happened?" "I think he bought someone jewelry," I said. My voice was steady. Too steady. "I'm going to wait and see who gets it." "Renata." "I need to know the whole truth first," I said. "I need to be sure." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, but I'm here, the second you need me." I sat on the edge of the bathtub after we hung up, staring at the closed gym bag on the floor. Part of me wanted to confront him right then, demand answers, but another part, maybe the smarter part, Wanted to wait. Because if I asked now, he'd have time to explain it away, to make me feel crazy for questioning him. I wanted to see what he'd do when he thought I didn't know. I didn't mention the necklace. Not that day, not the next week. I went back to acting normal, or what Glenn thought was normal. I cooked dinner a few times. I asked about his day. I laughed at his jokes, and I watched him relax like he'd been holding his breath and finally decided everything was fine. 2 weeks later, he told me about a work mixer. "Friday night," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "You should come. It's been a while since you've met the team." I almost said no, but then I thought about that necklace, still tucked in his gym bag as far as I knew, and I said, "Sure. Sounds good." He looked surprised. "Yeah? Okay. Cool." The mixer was at some trendy bar downtown, the kind with exposed brick and drinks that cost $18. Glenn was in a good mood on the drive over. He talked about work, about some coding problem he'd solved, and I made the right noises in the right places. He didn't ask about my day. When we walked in, I recognized a few faces from previous events, his manager, a couple of developers I'd met before. And then I saw her, Simone. She was standing near the bar, laughing with someone, and she was wearing the necklace. It was delicate, gold, with a small pendant I couldn't quite make out from across the room. But I knew. I just knew. Glenn didn't see her right away. He was getting us drinks. I stood there watching Simone, and I felt this strange calm wash over me. Not anger, not even hurt, really. Just confirmation. I'd been right. When Glenn came back with the drinks, he saw her. His face did something complicated. Surprise, then nervousness, then this forced casualness. "Oh, Simone's here," he said like it was no big deal. "I should say hi, come on." He wanted me to meet her. That's what got me. He actually wanted to introduce us. We walked over and Simone's face lit up when she saw Glenn. "Hey, I didn't know you'd be here." Then she noticed me and her expression shifted. Not guilt, something else. Confusion, maybe. "Simone, this is my wife, Renata," Glenn said. His voice was too bright. "Renata, this is Simone. We used to work together." "Still do, kind of," Simone said, laughing. "Different companies, same projects sometimes." She extended her hand and I shook it. Her grip was firm, confident. "Nice to meet you," I said. Then I looked at the necklace. "That's beautiful. I love delicate jewelry like that." She touched it reflexively. "Oh, thanks. It was a gift." "Recent?" I asked, smiling. "Yeah, actually, a few days ago." She glanced at Glenn, and there it was. A flicker of something. Uncertainty, like she was checking to see if she'd said the wrong thing. Glenn cleared his throat. "Simone's been crushing it on this new project. Tell Renata about the client acquisition thing." He redirected so smoothly. And Simone went along with it, talking about work, and I stood there nodding, sipping my drink, watching them. The way Glenn leaned in when she talked, the way she smiled at him, easy and familiar, the way neither of them thought I could see what was right in front of me. When we finally stepped away, I said, "She seems nice." "Yeah, she's great," Glenn said. "Super talented." I wanted to ask him about the necklace right then, just say it out loud. But I didn't, because I realized something standing there in that loud bar with overpriced drinks and people I didn't know. I didn't actually need him to admit it. The truth was already there. He'd given someone else a gift he'd never think to give me. He'd spent time and money and thought on someone who wasn't his wife. On the drive home, Glenn tried to make conversation. "That was fun, right? Good to see everyone." "Yeah," I said. Then, casual as anything, I asked, "Where'd Simone say she got that necklace?" He paused. Just half a second, but I caught it. "I don't think she said." "Huh. I really liked it. Maybe I'll ask her next time." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Yeah, maybe." He was lying, and he knew that I knew, but neither of us said it. We just drove home in silence, and when we got there, I went straight to bed. He stayed up watching TV. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and I didn't cry. I just thought about what came next. I waited a week before I did anything. I needed that time to think, to plan, to make sure I wasn't acting out of hurt or impulse. I met with a lawyer on Tuesday. Her name was Patricia, and she didn't ask me if I was sure. She just listened, took notes, and told me what my options were. By Thursday, the papers were drawn up. I didn't sign them right away. I kept them in my car in a folder under the passenger seat just to know they were there. On Saturday, I invited everyone over for dinner. Glenn's brother Vance, their father, Brooke, my mom, Dinah. I told Glenn it was just a casual thing, a chance to catch up since we hadn't all been together in a while. He seemed happy about it, relieved even. Like maybe he thought things were going back to normal. I spent all day cooking. Glenn's favorite, pot roast, roasted vegetables, the pasta salad I'd made last time. I set the table with the nice dishes, the ones we got as wedding gifts and barely used. Glenn walked through the kitchen twice and told me it smelled amazing. He kissed my forehead. I smiled. Everyone arrived around 6. My mom hugged me a little longer than usual. I'd told her what I was planning, and she'd asked if I was sure. I told her I'd never been more sure of anything. Dinah came in last, gave me a look that said, "I'm right here," and took her seat. Dinner was easy. Everyone talked and laughed. Glenn's father told the same stories he always told. Vance and Brooke seemed more comfortable with each other than last time. Glenn was relaxed, joking around, refilling glasses. At one point, he made a comment to his dad about keeping up with the times, and his dad laughed and said, "Yeah, gotta know when to upgrade, right?" Glenn grinned. I felt my mother's eyes on me from across the table. Dinah set her fork down slowly. When everyone finished eating, I stood up. Not dramatically. I just stood and the conversation naturally quieted. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I said. My voice was steady. Glenn looked up at me, smiling, probably thinking I was about to toast or something. Glenn and I have been together for 7 years, and in that time I've learned a lot about love and respect, about what it means to be seen, to be valued. Glenn's smile started to fade. Vance glanced at Brooke. "Glenn made a joke recently," I continued, "about upgrading, about trade-in value, and at first I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe it was just a joke." I looked at him. He was very still. But then I started paying attention, and I realized it wasn't just one joke. It was a pattern, a way of seeing me that I'd been ignoring for a long time. "Renata," Glenn started, but I held up my hand. "I found the necklace, Glenn, the one you bought 2 weeks before the mixer, the one Simone was wearing." The room went completely silent. Brooke's eyes widened. Vance stared at his plate. Glenn's father set down his drink. "I'm not going to make a big scene," I said, my voice still calm. "I'm not going to yell or cry or ask you to explain, because honestly, I don't need to hear it. I already know the truth. What I want to say is this. I'm filing for divorce. The papers are with my attorney. You'll be served on Monday. I've already found a place, and I'm moving out next weekend." Glenn stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You can't just—" "I can," I said. "And I am." My mother reached over and squeezed Dinah's hand. Glenn's father looked at his son with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe. Glenn looked around the table like he was waiting for someone to back him up, to tell me I was being irrational. No one did. Then his phone buzzed on the table. Once, twice. He glanced down at it reflexively. I saw the name on the screen. Simone. I smiled. Not cruelly, just knowingly. "You should get that," I said quietly. "It might be important." I picked up my glass, took one last sip of wine, and walked toward the door. My mom and Dinah stood up to follow. I turned back just once. "Vance, Brooke, it was really good seeing you both. Glenn's dad, I wish things had been different. I wish someone had taught your son that women aren't things you trade in when you get bored." Glenn followed me outside as I reached my car. "Renata, wait, how long have you—" I opened the car door and looked at him, really looked at him. "I knew the first time you joked about replacing me," I said. "I just wanted to see if you'd stop." He didn't have an answer for that. I got in the car and I drove away. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my own apartment. It's smaller than the house. a one-bedroom in a quieter part of town, but it's mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish in the cabinet, every choice about what goes where. I didn't realize how much I'd been living in someone else's space until I had my own again. The divorce was finalized last month. It wasn't dramatic. Glenn signed the papers without much fight. I think he was relieved, honestly, or maybe just tired. We divided things up through our lawyers, kept it clean and distant. I didn't ask for more than what was fair. I didn't need to punish him. I just needed to be free of him. Work has been good, better than good, actually. 3 months ago, I got promoted to senior consultant. Turns out, when you're not spending all your emotional energy managing someone else's ego, you have a lot more left over for yourself. My boss told me I'd been operating at a different level lately. I didn't tell her why. I just thanked her and accepted the raise. I heard through Vance, who apologized to me, surprisingly, in a long text message about not speaking up sooner, that Glenn and Simone dated for about 2 months after I left. She ended it. Vance said she told Glenn he was too immature and not ready for something real. I didn't feel vindicated when I heard that. I just felt nothing, which I realized was its own kind of victory. A few weeks ago, Glenn asked if we could meet for coffee. He said he wanted to talk about things and get closure. I read the message twice, then deleted it. I didn't block him. I just didn't respond. Because the truth is, I don't need closure from him. I don't need an apology or an explanation or whatever story he's built in his head about what happened. I already have everything I need. Last weekend, I ran into Brooke at a bookstore. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She'd cut her hair short and she looked different, lighter somehow. She saw me and smiled, a little nervous, like she wasn't sure if I'd want to talk to her. "Hey," she said, walking over. "How are you?" "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. "How are you?" She hesitated, then said, "I broke up with Vance." I raised my eyebrows. "Yeah?" "He made a joke about me being high maintenance," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "And I remembered what you did, how you didn't just sit there and take it. So I left." She looked at me. "I wanted to thank you for that, for showing me it was possible." We ended up getting coffee together. Not for long, maybe half an hour, but it was easy and honest. She told me about the new job she'd started, about moving into her own place. I told her about my promotion, about learning to be okay with quiet evenings alone. We didn't talk about Glenn or Vance much. We didn't need to. When we said goodbye, she hugged me and said, "I hope you're really happy." "I'm getting there," I said. And I am. Some days are harder than others. Some nights I still wake up and reach for someone who isn't there, and then I remember that's okay. That being alone isn't the same as being lonely, that I'd rather have my own company than someone who makes me feel invisible. I used to think love meant staying quiet when someone hurt you. That being strong meant not making waves, not causing problems, just enduring. But real strength is knowing your worth isn't up for debate. It's recognizing when someone shows you who they are, and believing them the first time. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life, and that's not something to feel guilty about. That's just the truth. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll date again someday. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll meet someone who sees me the way I deserve to be seen, or maybe I'll just keep building this life that's entirely my own. Either way, I'm not waiting for someone else to decide my value anymore. I'm done being a placeholder in my own story. If this story meant something to you, I hope you'll share it. You never know who needs to hear it. And thank you for being here, for listening. Sometimes that's all we really need, to know we're not alone in this. I'm learning that the best kind of ending isn't about revenge or proving someone wrong. It's about waking up one day and realizing you're okay, that you're more than okay, that you're finally actually free, and that's enough. And